We hit with a little crisis. The city of Jackson, we don't have water. Water means we don't have air conditioning. We can't use toilets. We don't have water. Therefore, we don't have ice, which pretty much places a burden on the program.
The water crisis has now hit collegiate football. Now, if you're unaware,
in Jackson, Mississippi, where the governor has declared a state of emergency, telling residents don't drink the water.
School drop-off isn't just for the kids. It's also for the water. The entire city is facing a boil water notice again.
We're told don't wash your hair with the water.
You can't remember a time when the kids could use the water fountains in the school?
I can't remember. I honestly can't remember.
This unfortunately has been happening for quite some time. And George Stewart, who you just saw on your screen, said that schools had to close in the middle of the pandemic.
So right now, we're operating in crisis mode. I got to get these kids off campus, the ones that live on campus, the one that lives in the city of Jackson, into a hotel and accommodate them.
And officials still can't tell people when the water will be safe to drink again.
Already dealing with flooded streets, more than 100,000 people are left without reliable running water. The rain-battered state now dealing with devastating damage to its major pump at Jackson's main water treatment facility.
According to the mayor of Jackson, though, they saw this coming.
This is a set of accumulated problems based on deferred maintenance that has not taken place over decades.
There's been a failure to recognize this as a unified problem, as a problem both on the state and even at times the federal level, understanding that we lived in an aging America.
Shokwe Antar Lumumba is Jackson's mayor.
If I could write you a check right now to fix the problem, how big would that check have to be?
For the water system alone, it would have to be in excess of more than $200 million.
In the meantime, for Jackson State football,
make sure all our kids are fed and all our kids have the necessities of life for the next several days until this crisis resides. That's what we're operating in right now. So we're going to find somewhere to practice, find somewhere that can accommodate every darn thing that we need and desire to be who we desire to be.
Jackson State's season opener is Sunday in Miami. However, the players, like many of the residents in Jackson, Mississippi, are victims to the failing infrastructure.
People in Jackson, Mississippi are being told to expect little or no drinkable running water for an undetermined amount of time.
Recent torrential rain, coupled with years of water system issues, have resulted in the crises. The city doesn't have enough water to fight fires, flush toilets, or even hand out to residents in need.
It is all very, very bad, but it is a crisis, a total system failure that has been decades in the making.
It's true. The Jackson Daily News wrote over 100 years ago of this problem, and the failure to act has brought this colossal collapse. Take a wild guess what it has to deal with. And you know what? Maybe if we go over the demographics, that'll help you. Via World Population Review, Jackson, Mississippi is almost 83% black in the year 2022. Last March, the Legal Defense Fund wrote that when the city dealt with this crisis previously, well, the emergency was not felt equally. While Jackson's population is over 80% black, reports indicate that predominantly white areas of the city have been relatively unscathed by the water issues. This enormous price tag and the human suffering that accompanies it represents a failure of state and regional leaders to measure, plan, and coordinate action around infrastructure needs, wrote Brookings. Overlooking the impacts of uneven infrastructure on different types of households, especially by race and income, is a big part of that failure. Jackson, Mississippi is a microcosm of our nation's massive failures to make amends for centuries of colonialism, slavery, and racism. The story of Jackson is like those of Flint, Michigan, Centerville, Illinois, and Shreveport, Louisiana. While the details from each city may vary, the core issue that binds these places together in anguish is painfully obvious.
But to truly understand how Mississippi's capital city found itself with a water supply that has been pushed way past the brink, it is worth looking at what happened in October of the year 1969. By that point, it was already the law of the land that racial segregation of children in public schools was unconstitutional. That had been decided 15 years earlier by the Supreme Court in Brown versus the Board of Education. But Mississippi had defied the court, keeping its schools completely segregated until 1969, when the Supreme Court essentially had to come back and say, Mississippi, do it now. White parents in Jackson were so upset by this ruling and about the potential for their children to attend school with black children that they packed a city auditorium to attend a raucous rally and air their grievances. The governor at the time, who was himself a staunch segregationist, that anger among white parents did not ultimately stop school integration, but it did drastically change the city of Jackson, Mississippi. It is estimated that in the 3 years after Jackson schools were integrated, more than 11,000 white students left Jackson's school district. And with them, also left many of the white, wealthy taxpayers who moved just outside the city. All the while, Jackson's water infrastructure continued to deteriorate. And the fight for who's going to pay for it, well, that fight continues to this day.
According to the Jackson Free Press, nearly 20,000 white people left the city between 2000 and 2010. When white people left, the city lost both tax revenue and institutional support, wrote the Grist, Joseph Lee. Let's go over something very quickly. Okay, so the mayor is black. The governor of Mississippi is white. And as of recent, they have been clashing about funding to update, alter, and better the infrastructure for the mayor's residence. Meanwhile, Reeves and Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann have blamed him and black leadership because, of course, they did. That's their only deflection, of course. Blame black leadership when they are asking you for funding. Ashton Pittman, a senior reporter for the Mississippi Free Press, wrote, Reeves, as staunch a Trump defender as one can be, did not invite the mayor to the emergency presser, nor have the governor and the mayor spoken directly about the ongoing crises. Jackson is a city with one of the largest shares of black people in America, in the blackest state in the union. Ideally, infrastructure serves as a shared foundation for economic, environmental, and public health between different neighborhoods and municipalities. However, infrastructure is often poorly maintained or intentionally overlooked in particular places, leading to a lack of access, affordability, and safety for many communities of color. Forward-looking infrastructure plans and projects designed to reduce risks, manage costs, and provide long-lasting benefits require different jurisdictions to work across economic and racial lines, something Mississippi has historically struggled to do. And since infrastructure is designed to be long-lived, these inequitable systems are also long-lived. Unfortunately, as we mentioned previously, akin to Flint, there has been the pollution of water with levels of lead being found. Legacy infrastructure goes hand in hand with a legacy of racism. The costs of legacy infrastructure parallel long-standing economic and racial disparities in the region. Without steady economic growth and shared economic opportunity in jobs, wages, and other activity, municipalities and water utilities struggle to predictably and equitably generate enough revenue to cover their infrastructure needs. Let's just be clear about this as well. The torrential downpours, these horrible floods that we are seeing in the South, are because of lawmakers' indifference to climate change. And this indifference is only because the fossil fuel industry is continuing to fund them and their indifference. The city has been dealing with a substandard water system for years. In March 2020, the EPA found the system had the potential for bacteria like E. coli in the water, issued an emergency order to address the system's deficiencies, and has been working with the state and city since then to improve the system. After a storm froze pipes across the city in 2021, many residents lost access to clean water for weeks. Last October, Lawyers representing hundreds of Jackson children sued the city over water system failures and mismanagement that led to hundreds, if not thousands, of children to be poisoned by lead across the city. Since July, Jackson has been under a boil water advisory because tests revealed potentially contaminated water. We are one of the wealthiest nations in the country, and yet the wealth gap continues to widen year after year, month after month, day after day. And lawmakers see this. They know this. Majority of them do not care. They just don't care. They are paid well not to care. They are paid well to not address these issues. And what's most troubling is they see the numbers, they know about all this stuff, and they continue this structural racism. They continue the disenfranchisement. They can address all this stuff, but the issues that they take on are the following: gay rights, abortion rights, trans kids wanting to play high school sports. Does it feel stupid? Does it feel meaningless? 'Cause it is. Where are the priorities? These are also Republican-led states. The power grid in Texas fails. Republican leadership. Floods. They don't want to address climate change because they benefit from the fossil fuel industry. How about the deaths of Americans because of firearms? They're paid handsomely by the gun lobby. It is so easy. It is so easy. The stuff that they are going after are smoke and mirrors to the actual issues. White Republicans control Mississippi state legislature. As Mississippi Free Press reported, Governor Tate Reeves and other white lawmakers are essentially holding the black-led, black-populated city hostage, refusing to fund repairs. The few repairs that have been made have mostly been affluent, largely white, North Jackson, clearly delineating not just the privileges but the power of whiteness. As State Representative Christopher M. Bell told CNN, "My colleagues at the Mississippi Capitol have a history of accusing the city of Jackson's legislative delegation of asking for handouts versus help. They, however, have a different view of the predominantly white communities surrounding Jackson when they request support."